Treasure is in the search, what we find out along the way. The people who search for truth and what they found, some who ended up penniless and broke on their deathbeds. In search of the truth that just wasn't there, but they did it though, which is more than what most would say. These people had a theory and researched their ideas to the bitter end. Mysteries that lay in hiding are all that we have now for adventure. Manuscripts hundreds and thousands of years old, yet to be translated. Conspiracy theories, spies, ciphers and espionage, going all the way back to the Dark Ages. Francis Bacon was considered the James Bond of his time. It doesn't matter who the writer was if the writing still remains. Search those manifests and ledgers and find out for yourself if the stories hold weight. If true to yourself, you will soon find yourself involved in all sorts of things. Learning words like boogery, disinheritance, and so forth. Information will present itself more and more, changing your perception of life slowly as time goes by. Many people are incapable of thinking outside of the box, and some are highly intelligent as well, living their lives for fame, credibility, and popularity. We shouldn't set ourselves upon a pedestal, criticizing these intelligent individuals. Some people realize that intelligence doesn't carry any degree. Some do claim that intelligence, and without a degree, represents wasted knowledge. Statements based on arrogance alone. Politicians and science work hand in hand, confusing the people, so that agendas can be met. The same scientists who believe in climate change are the same scientists that condone genetically modified organisms. Secrets are kept in order to protect us, while Marconi kills over 25 scientists. Deaths within a 20-year time span are considered coincidence. Mysterious deaths and suicide, of course. A few people go missing and never seen again. War criminals pardoned by their enemies in order to achieve space exploration and espionage. Nuclear physicists detonate nuclear bombs in the desert for decades. General Electric has nuclear reactor meltdowns in Japan, yet we are at fault for all environmental problems. Misinformation is constant and from all directions. Greenpeace no longer fights to save the whales or conduct scientific research anymore. Their efforts aim toward politics, and their founder disavowed. He left the organization and now supports nuclear energy, calling it the safest form of energy. As a society, we listen to parasites that gather crumbs from the table in order to eat. Intellectuals covet knowledge with copyright laws. People wish for fame and fortune through their achievements, instead of having satisfaction from the achievement itself. The powerful determine who is heard, and the media is a form of mesmerization. Whether it's television, newspapers, scientific journals, it doesn't matter. Exploration is replaced with economics, time frames, and alliances. Organizations replace democratically elected officials and force social reforms on the citizens. Referendums and counter-referendums are still being used in today's world. Cooperation and compliance is your only salvation. Politicians give credibility to a cause to achieve political agendas while pretending to be for the people, setting up systems of control and creating ignorant, lazy people who believe statistics and polls. Without method, words become laws that are manipulated so that the people can't understand what is being said. Hearing these words and becoming convinced of their ignorance and their need for help, we as individuals are too ignorant to govern ourselves, so we must be governed. The institutional man is trapped by ignorance and by his own consent. A poor man marches into the courtroom and is introduced to the thought that he needs a public defender. Being poor, he couldn't possibly defend himself, even if he is innocent of all charges. So he takes the public defender, surrendering his right to be heard in court and separated from the judicial process. Only his representation can speak on his behalf, while agreeing by stipulation to whatever his representation pleases. The ignorant man rants about freedom, saying this country was built on the backs of the free, but what does his conscience really say? Follow the leader and fight for the cause? Together we stand and divided we fall? People confuse honor with loyalty, choosing strategy over honesty. Heroes are chosen, but soldiers have mothers, wives, and children at home. Lives filled with sleepless nights and worry. Heroes are placed in front of the people as martyrs, as trophies, so that their grandeur reflects onto the leaders they serve. Society idolizes leaders like kings sitting on a throne, and worshipped like gods. Leaders wear masks, nothing more than actors who pretend to be what we wish them to be. In secrecy, and behind closed doors, they are liars with sorrow in one hand, and peace in the other. Deceit is the only thing they know, with strategies played from days long ago. We worship new gods of cruelty, hate, suppression, and greed.
Theories about the earth and the craft forced many people into a life of hiding. The practice of secrecy was of importance to everyone within the Holy Roman Empire. Closed borders protected trade secrets, retained values and traditions as well as upholding the laws. Alchemists could brew their compounds and experiment in secrecy, while catering to royalty too. John Dee would do his sorcery in the same castles, where Queen Elizabeth laid her head at night. Media was born, with the printing press, and allowed information to travel more freely. Ideas of freedom, injustices, and unfair treatment of the common man began to emerge. Francis Bacon, King James, and many others flocked to Shakespeare. John Dee was trying to communicate with angels, and to do these things, secrecy was needed. Francis Bacon and Christopher Marlowe were friends to people involved with espionage. Both were suspected of being Shakespeare also, using the name in order to write controversial literature. The university which could have been involved, but these are only parts of an unspoken history. German courts practiced Vehmic law, which worked in darkness and was full of secret tribunals. Criminals were referred to as reprobates, and the sentence for any crime was death. Not only were criminals put to death, but anyone who found out who the members were, also would be executed. Members were given passwords, handshackes, and signs, so that other members would know that they belonged to the tribunal. Because there were no other solutions concerning justice in Germany. Vehmic law was vital to the country and flourished for well over 400 years. Finally, though, it became corrupted with complaints from the people concerning corruption. People were executed for witchcraft, murder, rape, and robbery. If criminals were caught in the act by 3 or more members, it was automatic death. Members would post summons anonymously, ordering criminals to appear before the tribunal, usually nailing the summon to a tree or some place where they went on a regular basis. To be cleared of the charges, the criminal had to appear and be cleared by a process of oaths. If they were members of the court, then they only had to appear and take the oaths on their own. If not a member, the criminal had to appear with another member of his family, who was a member. Still, the accused had to clear himself through a process of oaths. If the accused was not a member or did not have a family member who was in the court, 23 members of the court had to give their oaths in favor of the accused. If found guilty, criminals were hung by the neck from the nearest tree immediately, with an engraving carved into the tree bark, showing that the court had done its work. Criminals fled Germany and the Holy Roman Empire to avoid prosecution. Countries opposite to the Catholic Church, where people went, fleeing their death. King Louis VII's entire family died from smallpox when he was a baby. In order to save the family's bloodline, he was forced into sexual intercourse at an early age. His cousin and regent of France allowed this, fearing that the family would lose the throne to the House of Orleans. At the age of 11, Louis became king, and the regent tried to marry him to his 3-year-old cousin. The young king was not interested, so the marriage did not occur. Instead, a young princess from Poland was chosen, who was old enough to conceive. King Louis VII enjoyed the company of women as he grew older, and bore many illegitimate children. Eventually, he contracted syphilis and died. Unlike King Louis VII, his cousin, Leopold I, was quite the opposite. The second son of Marie Anne from Spain and King Ferdinand III, Leopold was made heir apparent after his older brother died from smallpox. Making him the next in line as Holy Roman Emperor, Leopold was unprepared for the task. He was raised as a devout Catholic who was educated and taught by Jesuit priests. For a life intended for the sole purpose of serving the Church. Leopold's education was interrupted by his older brother's death, so he had to rule as Holy Roman Emperor instead. Because of his church teachings, Leopold was defensive and reserved in public, yet open to close friends in private. King Louis VII allowed trade in France to flourish by opening channels along riverways for better travel. France's communications and economy were also improved during Clus's reign. His actions too may have been responsible for the French Revolution though. France's wealth was damaged over giving back lands in exchange for treaties that were won in battle against other countries. King Clus also worked with conspirators and revolutionists in secrecy against his enemies, which discredited France's power, raising questions about King Clus and his absolute monarchy. Where King Leopold had to battle against King Clus VI for territory, King Louis VII would later return it, constantly getting into conflicts, and besides being Holy Roman Emperor, Leopold also ruled Croatia, Hungary, and Bohemia. Both Leopold and Luz were well educated to different languages, history, natural science, literature, astronomy, alchemy and the arts. Politics in the empire concerned giving land back, making treaties, created better travel routes and communications, then creating treaties and participated in conflicts. Constantly involved with conflicts, Leopold started the Turkish War, Dutch War, and the Spanish Succession, dragging every European nation into both the Turkish War and Spanish Succession. Leopold's selfish desire for power and his intent of taking the Spanish king's lands, then giving it to his sons. In the end, Romania could neither say if they won or lost, and the Spanish succession went well beyond Leopold's life. During the French-Dutch War, there was an alliance between the Netherlands, the Holy Roman Empire, and Spain of Lorraine. In the War of the Quadruple Alliance of 1718, there was an alliance with Austria, France, the Dutch Republic, and Great Britain. Another War of the Quadruple Alliance in 1815 had an alliance between the United Kingdom, Austria, Prussia, and Russia. The enforcers of the Concession of Evora-Monte of 1834 consisted of an alliance between Portugal, the United Kingdom, France and Spain. The central powers of World War I consisted of Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria. Kings created alliances in order to defend themselves from each other. These alliances extended into the reign of their children, and payments were expected. Treaties were signed between the victors and the ones defeated. Hostages were taken for ransom from both the enemies that were defeated and from the kingdom that won as well. Some of the treaties would result in civil war, so hostages were needed from both sides. Fiefs were given to princes, in order to create a pecking order among the people. Princes would side with kings, in order to take over other kingdoms, ruled by the same royal families. Alliances between kings drew more of the royal families into the conflict also. During the Second Northern War, Georgi II Rakoczy, Prince of Transylvania, allied with King Charles X of Sweden, attempting to claim the throne of Poland from King John II, who was allied with Leopold I. An alliance which extended from Leopold's father's reign before him. Of course, with this alliance there was also payments for service. Helping defeat Transylvania and Sweden, Leopold campaigned even further into Sweden, and was able to obtain the Treaty of Oliva. Because of his treaty with the Ottomans after the Turkish War, Georgi agreed to ally with Charles X. Georgi Rakoczy renounced the Catholic Church, and converted to Calvinism as a child, because his mother's wishes. Part of the treaty made after the Turkish War allowed Transylvania to become a tributary of the Ottoman Empire. Participating in an unauthorized war against Poland resulted in Georgi Rakoczy being dethroned by the Ottomans. His son was automatically made prince, but the Ottomans proclaimed that no Rakoczy was to ever sit on the throne again. From that day forward, every member of the family was held hostage by the Holy Roman Empire. Eventually Georgi died at the hands of the Ottomans, and 2 generations of his family were held hostage by Leopold I. After his death, Georgi's wife and children reverted back to Catholicism, in order to gain favor with the Habsburg court. Francis Rakoczy was appointed a count, but being the son of Georgi, he could not sit on the throne. He was still able to marry a Croatian countess and join a conspiracy though, which he later became the leader of. Later it was involved in creating an uprising of noblemen in Upper Hungary. This resulted in the executions of all the noblemen, except for Rákóczi, because of a counter-reformation movement that his mother was a part of, and ransoming of a few castles, with money.